Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to build and publish a Docker image to Docker Hub using GitHub Actions. So let's get started. In this demo, I'm going to Dockerize a Python web server. For achieving CI/CD with GitHub Actions, you basically create workflow which utilize multiple GitHub Actions to build, test, and deploy as per requirement. Workflows can be triggered manually or automatically as well based on certain events happening in your repository, which includes code push to a branch, creating a pull request, creating a tag, and many more. On my screen, you can see a GitHub repository whose link will be available in the description section if you would like to use this code as a reference. Uh, So this workflow utilizes four actions, namely the checkout action, the Docker login action, Docker metadata action, and build and push Docker images action. The checkout action is to check out your code repository on the runner that is going to execute the workflow in background. The Docker login action is to log in on the Docker Hub registry using your credentials. The Docker metadata action is to build the metadata around your image. The metadata includes your tags, labels, and certain information about the image that you have created. And then the build and push Docker image action is basically to build your Docker image and push it to the Docker Hub registry. Um, Using Docker metadata action is not really mandatory because it is just building the metadata around your image. So if you don't want to build any customized metadata around your image, you can skip this action. But the other three actions are a bare minimum to build a CI/CD pipeline to deploy your, or I would say to publish your Docker image to uh, Docker registry. Now, all these four actions that I just talked about are GitHub Marketplace actions. So you don't really need to uh, do anything around customization of these actions. You can just refer to them and use them in your workflow files. Now, let's look at the login action and the metadata action in a bit more detail before we proceed forward. So the login action, as I said, is used to log in the Docker registry. Uh, the good thing about this action is it provides you support with other for other registries as well. So you can use this action to log in into many registries, namely GitHub Container Registry, the GitLab Registry, Azure Container Registry, and few more, which you can see on my screen. These are some of the popular registries available out there. Uh, Now, how you use this action? Basically, to use this action, you need to create some GitHub secrets. Before creating the GitHub secrets, you'll have to create a Docker access token as well, which is used as a password in this case. Uh, so the two action the two secrets that you'll have to create are named here, the Docker Hub dot username and the Docker Hub underscore token. You need to create these secrets as they are named here because they are referenced in the workflow file. So you cannot change the names that I have on my screen. If you want to change the names, then you'll have to modify the workflow file as well. Um, and then you specify these tokens when you are using this action in your workflow. Now, looking at the second action, which is the metadata action, which is used to build the metadata around your image. What how you can customize your metadata? I'll directly switch to showing you certain events and what the metadata looks like when you use those events. So as I was saying, your workflow can be triggered based on certain events happening on your repository. So let's say you're using a pull request event. Now, if you're using a pull request event, and let's say the reference of your pull request is refs slash pull slash to slash merge, basically it denotes a second pull request in your repository. So the Docker tag that will be created will be pr-2. Now, if you are using a push event and you are pushing your code to master branch, your Docker tag will be named as master. Now, if you're using a tag event and you created a tag named v1.2.3, then the Docker tags your image will have will be version 1.2.3 and latest. And similarly, if you are using workflow underscore dispatch, which is the manual execution on your master branch, so the Docker tag that will be created will be named as master. That's how you uh, build metadata around your image. There are a lot more customization options that you get with these actions. I am not using all of them, but obviously, based on your requirement, you can use other customizations that are available. So I'll be linking this. I'll be providing the link of all these actions that I'm using in my description section of this video. If you are interested in reading more about these actions, you can go ahead and read them. Um, yeah, so coming back to this, how it works. So basically, the event that I'm using to trigger this workflow is a tag event. So whenever I create a tag on my main branch with a starting of v, it will trigger my action. Obviously, if you don't want to use a tag, maybe you can use a pull request or a push event based on your organization standards and what makes you comfortable. You'll have to make a small change in the workflow file if you plan to use something other than tags, which is a pretty straightforward change. Now, before you go ahead with executing the workflow, there are some prerequisites. Basically, the prerequisites is you'll have to generate a Docker access token, and then you'll have to configure the GitHub secrets in your repositories before you can actually trigger the workflow. So how do you create a GitHub access token? It's very straightforward. You just log in into the hub.docker.com, and in the account settings you get an option to create a new access token. um, it is recommended that you give a proper description when you are creating the token, so that when you maybe want to audit sometime in future, you know what this token was created for. So yeah, having a proper description is very beneficial from auditing purposes as well. Uh, as soon as you click generate, you need to make sure to copy the token, because it just shows once and then it will never show you again. So if you have not copied the token on your first attempt, you won't be able to see it again. You'll have to generate a new token. But you always have a option to modify the permissions of the token. And how you do it, basically you can go ahead and modify a token and change its permission from maybe read to write, something like that. The permission varies. uh, yeah. So once you have created the token, you'll go ahead and create the GitHub secrets. You'll have to create two GitHub secrets, which we'll see just shortly. So let's go to Docker Hub and see how you create the token. You just go to your account settings, click on security, and here you get an option to create new access token. Now you will see I have already created a token, and in the description I have said GitHub access token, which pretty much clearly says that this token is used when things are being done from GitHub, and the scope is read, write, and delete. Uh, and it gives you an option to check when the token was created, what was the last used, and how the token was generated, etc. and etc. You can delete the token as well, which I won't do at this point. So let's go back to our GitHub repository and see how we create the GitHub secrets. So to create the GitHub secrets, you'll need to go in the settings section of your repository. Once you are in settings, you need to scroll down to the security section, and in that you need to click on secrets and variables, and then click on actions. So once you are in actions, you get an option to create new repository secret here on the top right. As soon as you click, there is a box that opens for you where you need to name your secret and then provide secret value and just click add secret. So the name of the secret, as I said earlier, needs to be the one that I have referred here. If you plan to use a different name, you need to update the workflow file as well. So let's go back. As you can see, I have already created both of the tokens, so I'm not going to do it again. Uh, yep, that's all about tokens. So let's go back to the repository code and let's have a look at the workflow file now and see what and how it's doing things in background. So as you can see, the name of the workflow is a standard name, publish Docker image to Docker Hub. Now the event that I'm using in my case is a event where tag is created and the tag starts with V, as I was saying. Now, the next is how you configure your jobs. So the name of the job is push Docker image to Docker Hub, which is self-explanatory. Now the runs on event is something which I would be more interested in. Here, runs on that I have used is Ubuntu latest. You do have options to use different OS as well. You can use Mac OS, you can use Windows based on your requirement. The billing of all the agents differs, and the billing is based on minutes. So whatever suits best in your case, you can use those agents. Now, under the first step is to check out the repository. Basically, I'm using the checkout action here, which we discussed briefly earlier in this video. I'm using the version 3 of that action. Now the next step is to log in into the Docker Hub, again using the login action version 2. And as you can see, I have specified here that when you are executing the Docker login action, you need to use the GitHub secrets with this name. That is the reason it is critical you create the secrets with these names. Otherwise, your workflow, even though you would have created secrets, but your workflow will fail because they have a different name here. So if you plan to change the secrets, you have to update the workflow file, and that's the place where you'll update the workflow file. Uh, Moving on to next action. So the next action is to build the metadata of your Docker image. Again, the action is the metadata action, and I'm using version 4 of it. Uh, Now, when I call this action, I give it an ID called meta, and with this, I'm telling it that this is the Docker registry that you need to push the image to. Uh, so DevOps Hub 2023 is my account name, and Docker Web Server is the repository that I have created in my workspace. So based on your requirement, obviously based on your configuration, you'll have to modify this. Uh, and the next step is to build and push Docker image. Again, I'm using the build push action version 4. It's going to build your Docker image and publish it to the Docker Hub. When I'm executing this action, I'm telling it that the push is true and the tags and labels that it is creating are the outputs of the previous action where the ID was meta, which is being referred here. So if you are diverting from these values, you now know where you need to update things. So that was all about the workflow file. Now let's go to the uh, Python script, which is doing the work in background. So this is the web server.py that I'm using in background. This is a standard Python file where I'm importing some modules, http.server and socket server. I'm exposing port 8815 of my local machine, and then this is the handler that is going to uh, spin up the web server for me. It's a pretty straightforward thing. And then the way Python web server works is it looks for a file either with the name of index.html or index.htm. If it is kept in the same directory, it will use it as an entry point. But you do have options to customize the entry points and use some other files. Again, index.html is a straightforward HTML file which will just display successfully serving the request with Dockerized Python-based server. Uh, and now let's look at the Docker file. The Docker file is again a very simple Docker file. It uses the Ubuntu latest server in background. And then on top of it, I am running the apt update, basically to update all the versions of the software. Then I'm installing Python 3, and then I'm installing a nano editor on it. Now the work directory is basically to create the working directory, and in the working directory, I'm copying the two files which we briefly discussed just now, which is webserver.py and index.html. Now at the end, I'm using CMD basically to tell that the container is going to use Python 3 to execute webserver.py when it is launched. Yep. So I think that was all about the code base that I'm going to use in this demo. Now let's go and make a change to our repository. Now, even though I'm using the tag event to trigger the workflow, but I will still make a change to the repository because I already, if I go to my Docker Hub, I already have um, a version of this image already published, which I called version 1.0. And as I was saying, it auto creates the latest tag as well when you use the type of customization. So what I'll do is I can go ahead and create another tag, but it will be same image that I have created just now. So I just want to have a different image. So let's do one thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a slight change to my Docker file. And in that change, what I'm going to do is I'll remove the nano editor command because I don't really need the nano editor on this in this case. So this will introduce a change in the Docker file. So it will be built and pushed again. So the change has been made. Let's add it. Let's create a commit. Okay, I'll just name my commit as publish a demo Python web server, and let's push it to our remote repository. Okay, so the change is now pushed to our remote repository. Let's go there and just make sure the new change is there. You see the remote repository has just got updated now. And if we go to our Docker file, the run nano editor is not there. Yeah, so let's now create a new tag, which will trigger our workflow, and then we will see how it looks like. So we'll go in the releases and draft a new release. And here we'll just create a tag version 2.0 and select create new tag. Now we'll just set as the latest release and publish release. So the tag has been created. If we go to the actions, you'll see action got triggered, which you can see here, publish a demo Python web server. Let's go to this action. Yeah, so it's currently building and pushing the Docker image. It shouldn't take a lot of time. I guess should take around maybe 15 or 20 seconds. Once this is done, we will look at things in background, and looks like it's done. So if I scroll up, so the first step is to check out the repo. As you can see, it's checking out your repository to a temp location on the agent that is triggering it. Now the next thing is it's trying to log in into the Docker Hub. As you can see, login successful. It was successfully able to log in into the Docker Hub. The next step is to extract the metadata. Let's quickly go to the tag section to see. You can see here, it has created a tag called version 2.0, and it has also created a tag latest. I'm not using any other thing, so I'm not going to other sections. Now build and publish Docker image. This is everything is just getting executed. Basically, whatever you had in your Docker file, it's getting compiled and a Docker image is getting created. So if I scroll down, you can probably see as well here it's creating the working directory. Then it's copying the web server.py. Then it is copying the index.html. At the top, I'll have to search through where it's installing Python, setting up Python. You can see things are happening around Python. Yep, it's doing things around Python. Looks good. Yeah, Python 3. Yeah, here it is. Run apt install Python 3. So it's installing Python at this point. So this is how the image was built and pushed to your Docker Hub repository. Now let's go to Docker Hub and see whether the version got updated or not. So if you can see here, previously we had version 1.0 and latest. Let's click refresh. So now you can see last pushed 2 minutes ago, and you have a version 2.0 as well, and then a latest as well. Version 1.0 is the one which was there earlier. Yep. So yeah, that's how the new version of the image is pushed to the Docker Hub registry. Let's go back to Visual Studio and try to pull this image on the local. Now I'm going to run the Docker commands. So you need to make sure that your Docker desktop is running in background so the commands are available for you. Let's just run Docker images to see what exactly is there on your system, on my system. So you can see I have already pulled version 1.0 earlier. Let's pull version 2.0 now. Oops, sorry. Too habitual to use Git. So obviously Git comes in picture, but the command is docker pull, and then the Docker image name, and then the tag is version 2.0. Let's hit enter. Before running this command, you need to make sure you are logged in using your Docker credential into the CLI. Otherwise, you'll get the authentication failed error. And logging in is pretty straightforward. You instead of using your password, again, I would suggest you to use the token that was created previously to use with GitHub. You can use the same token to log in into the CLI as well. So the pull is finished. Let's just run Docker images again once to see it is showing up. You can see we have two images now. If I go to Docker desktop, here also you'll see two images. and the version 2.0 says created 4 minutes ago. So we are good with this. Now the next part is let's create a container out of it and see if the image is working properly. So what I'll do is I'll spin up a container and then we will try to fire the uh, command. So I'm going to create a container here. I'm mapping the port 8815 of my local machine to port 8815 of the container, and let's hit run. And I have specified that I'm using version 2.0 of the image, so it will use the latest image. Yeah, so the container has got created. Uh, let's get the list of containers. So you can see there is a container, you can see its container ID, and in the command, you can see it's Python 3 web server. And the port mapping is 8815 is mapped to 8815 on TCP. And since I didn't give any name, it's Practical Solomon name that Docker has chosen for me. So let's go to my containers here. If I click here, it should open a web page for me, and hopefully the web browser will load. Sometimes it can take some time to load on first attempt, which looks like it's taking. Okay, so it seems it's a live demo and it has decided, the demo board has decided to play around with me, but let's try to use a different browsers and see how it behaves there. Yeah, it's working here. So kind of, yeah, demo gods are not really happy with me. Cool. So our container is up and running and we can see the content getting served as well. Ooh, it's loaded here as well. So it was just a matter of time that it loaded everywhere. And I have I have it open at 3 places, which is kind of good, and it worked everywhere. So yeah, that's all I wanted to cover about creating a Docker image and publishing it to the Docker Hub registry. If you like the content, please hit like, subscribe my channel to stay up to date with the latest content getting released. I am releasing content every week. So see you in the next one. Bye-bye.